Okay, hello everyone. Today's topic is the big topic of the moment when we talk about AI, when we talk about technology, which is ChatGPT, and whether it can give you an advantage at work, and especially in sales and in a sales and marketing environment. And to help me discuss this topic today, I'm joined by Dominic Allon, who is the CEO of Pipedrive. Hi, Dominic.
Hey, hi Bernard. It's fantastic to be with you today. Really excited to get into this conversation. It's definitely a big buzz topic at the moment.
Yes, and I have written extensively about what ChatGPT is and how it works and what the downsides are and the upsides and how it will affect different industries and different jobs. So if you want to have any more beyond what we're talking about today, have a look on my website as well as my YouTube channel, where you can find lots of videos that I've recently done on that topic. So for anyone who's lived under a rock and doesn't know what ChatGPT is, it basically is a large AI-enabled language model that allows you to do lots of things. So it's like a chatbot, an interface that you can ask questions and can answer those questions. You can ask it to do much more, though. You can ask it to write poetry, write articles, summarize content, write computer code, and much more. So this is something that has brought AI to the forefront of so many people's minds. We've talked about AI now for such a long time, but suddenly everyone has access to this free tool, and people were blown away, thinking, okay, AI is real. The capabilities are improving all the time. So maybe we can start, Dominic, by you giving us your broad thoughts on ChatGPT. Where
Sure.
do you want to give us an overview of what
Yeah,
you
let
you
me. I
thought?
think it's helpful, Bernard, to start by panning back slightly and just thinking about the last, 30, 40 years of technology development, thinking about this modern era of computing and the different waves of innovation that we've seen. So, there was a point not so long ago when, the computer was in the basement and you needed a special key card to access it. And then that switched into a generation of desktop computers. I think Microsoft famously had a vision for there to be a computer on everyone's desk, and initially that was thought to be wild, and now, of course, it's commonplace. We then shifted, of course, forward into the era of mobile. I think most of us will remember when the iPhone came out in June 2007. That felt like a moment, didn't it? That was the kind of crystallization of that big new era, I suppose, of mobile. More recently, of course, all the buzz has been about the cloud. And then now we have what feels like, I think, an important moment, the beginning of a new era. And I think the ChatGPT engine has caught people's imaginations, because I think for the first time, AI has gone from being kind of like other and conceptual to consumable and relevant and immediate for us. And I think it's going to open up like a whole new generation of opportunity for us, both as individuals, so kind of AI and social, AI and entertainment, and then also, of course, in the way we get our jobs done. If you look back over these long-term kind of like secular technology shifts, what you've seen is that these new technologies quite quickly become embedded into the way we live our lives and the way we work. And whilst I think this is a seminal moment and there's a lot of buzz around ChatGPT, my expectation is that the next generation of work will embed and will leverage this notion of text generation as a norm. And I think that'll happen quite quickly.
Yeah, and for me, the real buzz is around generative AI tools that
Yes.
are able to create their own content. So the Chat GPT can do the homework for my 11-year-old. It can write songs. It can do crazy things. But this is just one part of it. We now have another tool that I've recently covered quite extensively, is DALL-E 2, generative image generation tool. So you can describe anything you want an image of, a photo, a painting, a drawing, and it creates it. And this is also created by or released by the same company, OpenAI, that created ChatGPT. And I guess Microsoft is a massive investor now in this. They've just announced $10 billion investment in OpenAI. and they're planning to integrate this into their Bing search engine, which would be really interesting. For me, it's super interesting when we think about how the potential of potentially combining the pre-trained model that we have now, that was trained on a snapshot of the entire internet and lots of books and content, but up to 2021. So the really amazing leap would be to combine this with real-time search, and so there's huge potential. So what do you feel ChatGPT will, or how will it impact the workplace?
Yeah, sure. Maybe just before I get to that question, because you mentioned DALL-E, and I know that many people listening to this podcast probably would have had a go at playing around with ChatGPT. Far fewer people would have actually played around with DALL-E, but it is, as you said, another open AI product, and it is fantastic. You can ask it to generate an image of a hamster on a roller coaster in the style of a stained glass window, for example. I played around with it with my children and had a lot of fun with it. And it's the kind of image equivalent of, generative AI, AGI, ChatGPT, and a very, very powerful experience. I think definitely when I tried ChatGPT and DALL-E for the first time, I had a similar experience of like, wow, we're in a new era. We're in a new place.
Yeah.
Back to your question, how will generative text, AGI, change the workplace? Well, I think to answer that question, it's helpful to reflect on how previous technologies have been integrated into the way we get work done. So Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAPI, he often uses the example of a calculator. How did a calculator change the way we figure out like maths puzzles, teach maths? It actually got integrated into the way we work quite quickly. And my expectation is that this new tool, this ability to generate text quickly in a foundational, quite generic, but logical manner, will actually become embedded quite quickly into the way we work. So there are multiple use cases. An obvious one would be thinking about Jasper or ChatGPT and the work of a copywriter in a creative industry, or for a journalist, for example, writing blog posts. You can also think about use cases in, for example, customer support and customer success, and improving and honing the chatbots that are now really kind of commonplace and generic. I think the quality and the natural language interface of those offerings will continue to improve. If you work in law, you can imagine ChatGPT massively accelerating the time it would take you to master a new area of case law, for example, and to give you a foundational, like very quick sense of what you're dealing with and precedents in that particular domain. And then you can think of other use cases in HR, for example, perhaps helping you generate relevant interview questions to the job role and type that you're looking for, creating internal copy to guide and support employees, and on and on. And in each of those use cases, what you're seeing is that what is kind of lower level, kind of like intellectual and knowledge work is being automated. And what that will do is it'll free up those professionals to do two things, I think. So firstly, to be more efficient and effective and to own a wider scope of work. And secondly, to bias towards a higher level cognitive tasks. So if I can just give you a simple example from the world of financial management and fintech. I previously worked at QuickBooks, and what we saw at QuickBooks was that when we were able to automatically match, receipts and bank transactions and save accountants and bookkeepers thousands of hours a year painstakingly going through transaction and matching them, that freed accountants up to manage more customers, to win more clients, and then to spend time with their clients on higher level trusted advisor work. And I think that's a really good prototype for how the knowledge economy will benefit from generative text, and how it'll free us up to be more efficient, to cover a wider book of business and to focus on higher value added tasks. The other point here is that the role that we all play in our different fields and our different roles will continue to be critically important, because typically ChatGPT will offer up a fairly generic general answer. And it's almost always going to be the case that you're going to have to augment that with a particular point of view or the right tone and style for your company. And so for me, it's about this combination of kind of better together and how these new technologies can augment the way we get work done, make us more efficient and effective. Bernard.
Yeah, I very much agree. That is exactly what that would have been my answer too. It makes us more efficient. It, to some extent, it enables people to do even things that they might not be comfortable doing. So I'm thinking about a data analyst, for example. They might be really good at analyzing data, but maybe not good at writing reports. So generative AI tools can then draft those reports and summarize the key findings from the analysis.
Yes.
On the other side, there might be lots of people that say, I'm not really comfortable analyzing data. Tools like ChatGPT can analyze data for you and draw out conclusions. So it will work alongside us. It will augment our jobs. One question that I'm grappling with every now and then is are we ready for this? Because there are people in so my own view is actually someone working as a bookkeeper painstakingly, as you said, drawing out information, putting it from one spreadsheet into the other, is a waste of human potential, right?
Sure.
This is how I see it. But there are people that are very happy doing this, and they're seeing it as an income. And do you think the world is ready? Because this is moving pretty fast, and it will augment all our jobs. What's your view on that?
So I think it's a great question, and I think it's something that is worth kind of thought, and something that we should consider as we think about how these new technologies will kind of upend the way we work, and actually potentially have quite significant ramifications for society, and the broader kind of social structures, and certainly kind of wealth equilibrium and distribution. So it's definitely a good question, and I think it's something that will continue to be aligned to this debate. Something we're going to have to continue to take seriously. I think it's true that the growth of technology capability is, in a sense, unstoppable. So famously, Moore's law tells us that computing power will grow exponentially over time, and it's really just a question of how we utilize and embed these technologies into the way we work, rather than whether we can really stop the tide. I don't think that's really a credible option. I think previous experience has told us through those different waves of technology innovation, whether it was a computer on every desktop, or the internet in your hand with mobile, or the shift from on-prem to cloud, that we can actually adapt quite quickly to new ways of working and introduce those. One of the key themes, I think, of OpenAI's kind of release roadmap principle is to move slowly. So if you listen to Sam Altman, what he'll say is that he's conscious of these potentially huge impact shifts on society and the way we work, and therefore he feels he has an obligation to let these new technologies out slowly, which I think it really is, as I said, kind of thoughtful and prudent and responsible. When you think about the downfalls or the shadows of ChatGPT and other AGI technologies, we're also going to have to take time to become wise to those. So when you play around with ChatGPT, it'll sometimes be wrong, but it won't necessarily know it's wrong. And it will serve up an incorrect answer with the same kind of confidence and facade as a correct answer. So we're going to have to start to understand how we manage that, how we censor that. There are going to be complicated questions of, oh, sorry, Bernard, did you want to come in?
No, you carry on.
I was going to say, there are going to be complicated questions of IP, ownership. So it's not obvious if you're processing a piece of copyrighted content through an AGI engine, does the copyright sustain through that process? Does Open API have an option on that copyright? We're going to have to work that through as well. And, as I said, I think of ChatGPT as a kind of language logic engine, right? It's drawing on this huge data lake of language and inferring the next best answer and serving that up in a conversational way. But it's inherently generic, and it's not going to echo, house styles and house tones. And so I think there are a number of areas where this introduction of generative AI into the way we work is going to create like huge benefits, but also we're going to have to understand and police those potential downsides. And I think you're going to see the legal and regulatory frameworks around the world playing catch up. When I was at Google back in 2007, in the UK, the ad industry really had no digital code of conduct. So working with key industry players in the government, I was instrumental in helping the UK's advertising code extend into digital. And with every wave of technology, you see a regulatory and legal kind of catch up. And that's going to happen as well, I think, in the next few years.
So for employees then, do you think it will give people an advantage in their job using tools like ChatGPT?
I think undoubtedly, I think many people will be familiar with this concept of the early adopter. The adoption curve says that in any given new technology, there'll be people that'll be quick to figure out, the cutting edge, the application, the benefit. And those early adopters, I think, will have an edge. They'll be, as I said, more efficient and potentially able to bias towards kind of higher order, like cognitive knowledge value add tasks. Question, the next is likely to be, well, is that fair or unfair? I mean, my view on it is, look, this is a really largely a level playing field in that these tools are open access and can be deployed effectively by anyone in the workplace. Like, play around with DALL-E, play around with ChatGPT. Like, think about how for your company the use cases will challenge your value chain, your value creation pillars, and think about how you and your company can experiment with new ways of working. There may be a question of cost. So if you're living in a world where you're an intensive consumer of open AI tokens and you're having to pay for that, that may create some disparity or kind of barriers to entry. But over time, I think the kind of marginal cost of intelligence will trend to the kind of no to low zone. So I would kind of concede that point. But I think generally speaking, this feels like a democratic, like widely available tool. And anyone with the motivation and the interest to leverage it will have that opportunity.
So the world you operate in at the moment is sales. So do you think it will have an impact in the sales industry?
I do, absolutely. So as you said at the top of the meeting, I'm the CEO of Pipedrive. Our job is to help small businesses grow. And we do that by giving them a sales-focused CRM that helps them really understand their deal flow. And within that, understand their next best action. Now, at the moment, the manner in which we would help a salesperson understand their next best action is kind of tactical and one way. So we have a sales assist tool that'll suggest that you augment a deal with a particular value to improve your revenue forecasting for the month. Or it might suggest that you add a particular companion app because we see a need for a particular a use case alongside your current deployment of Pipedrive. Imagine a world where the kind of tactical one-way assistant becomes far more conversational, where you can log in and you can say, hey, Pipedrive, this month I want to get paid sooner. Like, point me towards the clients that pay quickly. Or, this month I really want to ramp up my long-term deal flow. Help me understand my largest long sales cycle opportunities. And I think that conversational ability and the ability to really direct an AGI engine at the Pipedrive domain and then apply that specifically in the use case of the customer is going to be incredibly powerful. The other kind of obvious use case in our domain is around chatbots and customer success and customer service. I think that's going to become mainstream. And then finally, for sales and marketing, I think the generation of content is now going to become commoditized. And there's just going to be a baseline of content generation efficiency now that'll help salespeople and marketers become significantly more impactful in the workplace.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what are some of your main reservations then around the use of ChatGPT at work?
So I think I've kind of covered some of the potential pitfalls. So I think navigating these questions of copyright and IP are going to be absolutely critical. So if you're working in an industry which is characterized by high levels of kind of copywriting and IT ownership, so for example, in kind of the entertainment industry, you think about DALL-E and the opportunity DALL-E has to create images, and you think about IP ownership associated with those, or even if you play some of the other generative AI tools can take existing images, either that you've taken that are proprietary to you, or third-party IP images, and then render them in the style of Picasso, for example. I think those questions around IP are definitely going to be critically sensitive and going to require kind of real caution and thought.
Yeah, I find this really interesting, this thinking, because on the one hand side, I can completely see, yes, there's some sort of code that says this is how Picasso or Rembrandt or Van Gogh painted their paintings. But this is no different for me looking at them, walking through a gallery and then replicating this and getting inspired by this. So it's, for me, this is a really interesting gray area that will be, I'm sure we will hear more about. So I very much agree.
Good. And then I think the second area I touched on already briefly, which is this idea that, ChatGPT at the moment, and this may change in the future, but at the moment, it's not intelligent in the way you might conceive it. It doesn't actually add to the sum of human intelligence. When we go away and take a PhD, the idea is that we add to the sum total of human intelligence. As a language logic engine, OpenAI are simply mastering an existing, set of data. And within that, there may be inherent biases that could get amplified in an answer. And like I said, it doesn't know when it's wrong. And it can be hard for you to know when it's wrong. I mean, sometimes it's obvious. So playing around with it, I asked it, who is Dominic Allon? The answer was incorrect, but obviously I knew it was incorrect because I know me. I could have asked it, like, who is Bernard Marr? And it could have got some key facts about you wrong and kind of misled me to an area of interest or your kind of, background experience. And so I think that is also a critical watch out, and something that we will over time start to kind of sense for, and there'll be kind of checks and balances to police those.
Yeah, and for me, with this fast evolution of generative AI tools, what that means is that it will make our human skills much more important. And the two issues that you've addressed is that it might be wrong, is that we need critical thinking skills. So humans need to, we still need domain expertise, because I can't write an article aided by ChatGPT if I really don't understand the subject, because I can't read it. I can't fact check it. And we need the critical thinking to think, is this maybe biased? Is this a true reflection of what I think? How can I tweak this article? And the second one that I think, and again, you made the point that it can't add any new knowledge because it was trained based on everything we knew up to 2021. It can't look into the future. So creativity and imagination is a hugely valuable skill in the future, where it's only humans that can imagine a better future. I can come up with new ideas about articles, new angles, and so the human touch is really important. And do you have any concerns that bringing in ChatGPT might make our or take away this human touch in our businesses?
No, I mean, I think it's the opposite. I think that these tools will enable us to be more us, like for me to be more me, because they are automating these lower value added tasks and giving us a head start. So what you'll find typically, if you were to ask it to maybe craft a framework for an article, or in fact, I asked ChatGPT, help me prepare for an interview with Bernard on OpenAI, and it gave me kind of 3 or 4 pointers, but they weren't enough for me to prepare properly for this conversation. I needed to think about Pipedrive. I needed to think about my own experience and integrate some examples from the past. And so it may give you a head start, but what it'll enable you to do is to spend more time thinking about how you can apply your own experience, your own perspective to a kind of a generic framework. And I think what that means is that we will be freed up to actually focus on those kind of higher level areas, that kind of higher altitude knowledge working zone where we're really thinking things through. And I think that'll be very powerful. And as I said, I think for me, it's about better together, right? The augmentation of brain and computer, of the machine and our mindset, and that augmentation, that better together effect is absolutely my viewpoint. And I think if you look back, to those previous examples of like desktop, mobile, and cloud, you've seen that that's always been the case, and there's no reason to believe it'll be different this time.
Very good. Do you think by augmenting the world of work, it has the potential to replace humans in certain jobs?
No, I don't think it will. I think typically at any seminal moment in a new technology trend, people will talk about, well, does this mean the death of what came before? So, when radio was released, does this mean the death of the stage play? When television came out, is this going to be the end of radio? Like when YouTube came out, is that the end of TV? No, it's an augmentation. I think the other fear is often, does this mean that my job goes away or my way of working goes away? Well, in some senses, yes, because as you automate, whether it's kind of manual labor or like knowledge work, you won't spend time doing that. But of course, the natural effect of that is that you're freed up to focus on typically higher level service focused endeavors. And that then creates, by harnessing technology and enabling us to work more efficiently and more effectively, it creates a wealth effect. I mean, that is what it is to create wealth. And it creates kind of a rising tide that lifts all boats. And so for me, whilst it may change the way we work, it will actually be an improvement and a step forward. And it'll enable us to be, as I said, like more ourselves. And I think we should welcome that and kind of roll with it, rather than trying to fight it or put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's simply not going to be a viable option, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a story that you use ChatGPT to prank your staff, right? Do you want to share that story?
Oh, you heard about that? Yes. So this was just having a bit of fun a few weeks ago. I was getting ready for an offsite with the Pipedrive senior leadership team. And so I asked ChatGPT to write a motivational speech to kick off an executive company offsite. And then on the morning of the first day of this 2-day offsite, I just stood up and I said, right, Tim, just a few words to get going. And I literally read out the script. And actually, I think they were all like, wow, even I was a bit moved, right? It was quite a compelling speech. And I think I gave the game away slightly because I had a slight kind of, wry smile on my face. But when I asked them, right, who wrote that? They were all looking at me saying, well, I mean, you wrote it, right? Obviously. And I said, well, actually, no, it was ChatGPT. And so I think it shows you that this generative technology can actually give you a very, very strong head start. Now, in reality, if I was to ever do that again in the future, what I would do is I would take that starting point and I would add some flavor and some context and some specificity, like specific to that particular offsite. But it was a good enough head start. And I think I'm right in saying that most of the team felt like it was kind of my work and not OpenAI.
Very interesting. So when you look into the future, what are some of your concerns and what are you worried about?
Okay, so let me maybe start on the positive side of the ledger. So in terms of like what's coming next, I think firstly, we're going to see some form of OpenAI video. There's going to be a DALL-E style video creation tool. So imagine, hey, OpenAI, create a 3-minute video of Dominic Allon giving an overview of the impact of, ChatGPT on sales CRM. I mean, there's going to be some form of capability in that area.
And we already have the early versions of this. I'm using Synthesia AI.
Oh yes, of course.
And I have my own avatar there, so I can already do that.
That's right. You did an interview with the CEO, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyone who wants to see this, check out my YouTube channel for that.
There we go. Yeah, 100%. Love that. So I think that's on the horizon. I think secondly, if you ask yourself, well, what's the next big wave of technology going to be characterized by? I think it's going to be some form of quantum acceleration. The move from bits to qubits and an exponential step change in compute power. And if you think about the combination of that and OpenAI, I think that's going to be incredibly powerful. In terms of, I suppose, fears or concerns, I mean, typically the conversation will focus around what is sometimes called the alignment problem, which is a fancy way of saying, how do we make sure that these technologies serve our best interests and that we don't either accidentally or intentionally end up in a case of these powerful technologies being misused or abused. And I think that's a generic fear that in these conversations will often, for all the right reasons, be on the table. I mean, my personal view on that is that at the end of the day, these algorithms are programmed by us, and it's fairly straightforward for us to introduce, gates and permission bars and guardrails to control the application of these technologies. So, for example, if you look at the way OpenAI develop, they have red teams internally. They consult legal experts. They'll have third-party auditors. They'll be, releasing things slowly to mitigate, against all of these risks. And so I think you're going to see not only those practices commonplace amongst the large generative AI players, you're going to see legal and regulatory constraints impose themselves. And you're going to see, I think, just generally a high degree of prudence and caution with regards to these broader applications. My view is it's well within our capability set to manage these powerful tools, but it's not going to happen on its own. It's going to require thought and energy and application. And that's definitely going to be a part of the mix as the key stakeholders think about the rollout of these powerful technologies in the short, medium, and long-term future.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dominic, for your time today. That was a super engaging conversation and a topic that there's so much more to talk about that I'm sure this debate will carry on, and we will all over the next few years feel the impact of tools like ChatGPT and others, and they will clearly augment what we do and hopefully make the world a better place. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And for anyone who ever wants to re-watch or re-listen to this, you can always head to my YouTube channel or my podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard.